Hello, glad you can join us. Here's what we have for you. Navigating passenger rights as complaints mount against Air Canada.
Very clear refusal to book us on another carrier.
The rules and regulations travelers say are being flouted.
They attacked him and he defended himself.
A home invasion is spurring debate over the right to defend.
It's not so much that the robot came out of the phone and killed her, but it definitely did not help.
Plus, what ChatGPT told a young woman before she ended her life.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
A story now that has generated great debate. It's over a break and enter and a victim's right to defend. And it involves a renter who was arrested and charged with assault after confronting an intruder in the middle of the night. CTV's Heather Wright is in Lindsay, Ontario, with the issues and reaction to the situation. Heather.
Well, Sandy, this incident has raised a number of questions about use of force and self-defense, some calling it an example of a broken system, while experts say there is a limit to what's allowed. In this town of 22,000 people northeast of Toronto, many here are only talking about two.
I heard, what happened to, Jeremy upstairs, and, from what I understand, someone, broke into his place while he was sleeping, and they attacked him and he defended himself.
It all happened in the unit above Jesse Kalabik's tattoo shop early Monday morning. Police say they were called to this apartment for a report of an altercation. They say the resident, identified in court documents as Jeremy McDonald, woke up and found an intruder in his home. A fight ensued, and the alleged intruder, identified as Michael Kyle Breen, was airlifted to a Toronto hospital with serious injuries.
I think what he did was justified. There's a lot of, controversy going on right now.
The controversy erupted after police charged both men. McDonald faces aggravated assault and assault with a weapon charges. Court documents suggest a knife was involved. Breen faces various charges, including possession of a weapon, break and enter, and failing to comply with probation.
Something is broken. I know if someone breaks into my house or someone else's, you're going to fight for your life. This guy has a weapon. You're going to use any force you possibly can to protect your family.
Kawartha Police, which laid the charges, defended their decision. Under Canadian law, individuals have the right to defend themselves and their property. However, it is important to understand that these rights are not unlimited in Canada. The law requires that any defensive action be proportionate to the threat faced.
We really need to know the details of what happened inside that home.
Defense attorney Joseph Newberger says it's too early to know exactly what happened inside the apartment, and says Canada does have self-defense laws despite the misinformation circulating online.
We do have sufficient self-defense laws that are broad enough that if an individual comes in with a knife or a gun and you are at serious risk of bodily harm or death, you can respond with lethal force.
Court documents show there was an arrest warrant out for Breen, the alleged intruder, at the time of this incident. Once he is released from hospital, he will be held in custody pending a bail hearing. Meanwhile, McDonald will be back in court at the end of September. Sandy.
All right, CTV's Heather Wright in Lindsay, Ontario. Heather, thank you. One day after an end to the Air Canada flight attendant strike and with more aircraft taking off, CTV News has been hearing from passengers, and they're telling us that they're frustrated by what they see as Air Canada's inability and apparent unwillingness to book them on the next available flight. CTV's Adrian Gobriel now on the complaints and the failure of regulations to protect consumers. Hi, Adrian.
Hi, Sandy. Yeah, that's right. Canadians across the world have been reaching out to CTV News to share that Air Canada has declined to rebook them on a competing airline.
The Britton family's European summer adventure ended with their scheduled flight home with Air Canada canceled.
It felt like at every step of the way, instead of trying to provide a solution, it was, you can have a refund. Please have a refund. And we knew that that was really just a way of them absolving themselves of the responsibility.
According to the Canadian Transportation Agency's regulations, if an airline can't rebook you on their airline following a cancellation, a customer may choose a reservation from the next available flight that is operated by any carrier. The Britons found the next available tickets on a United flight from Italy to Kelowna. Air Canada declined to book them.
they said they didn't have access to it.
Stuck in Lisbon, Kyla Kumar also reached out to CTV News after Air Canada refused to rebook her family on a Delta flight home.
Very clear refusal to book us on another carrier.
CTV News also received an audio recording of an Air Canada agent refusing to rebook a customer because there was only a business class seat available.
You are required to put me in that space.
That is something you can take up with customer relations to see why is that not being offered, because on our end, we have to maintain the same cabin.
If only business class seats are available on next available flight, they have to rebook you.
Passenger advocates say Air Canada is knowingly breaking federal regulations for financial gain.
There is sufficient ground here to lay criminal charges.
Somebody should be doing an outreach to the CTA and saying, okay, guys, how are you going to handle this one?
CTV News did ask the Canadian Transportation Agency what they're doing to hold Air Canada responsible for breaking federal passenger protection regulations. The CTA didn't directly answer the question, saying in part that their enforcement team is actively looking into the situation and will take appropriate action as necessary.
The CTA is supposed to be the regulatory body that protects Canadian citizens. And again, these things happen, and there's really been no improvements.
CTV News has given Air Canada 2 days to return our questions. They've yet to respond to our email. Sandy.
Adrian at Pearson Airport. Thank you, Adrian. Well, beaches up and down the U.S. East Coast are closed as Hurricane Erin, the first of the season, churns north towards Canada. We asked CTV Atlantic meteorologist Kaylin Mitchell to take a look at the timeline and the threats posed by Erin. Kaylin.
Thank you, Sandy. Hurricane Erin carries on as a powerful Category 2 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds near 160 kilometers per hour. The critical part for Atlantic Canada is the change in direction of the movement of the storm, now off towards the northeast. And it's that quick shift from moving north to moving northeast that is going to help steer the storm mostly to the south and east of Atlantic Canada, keeping the worst of its weather impacts well offshore. Now, some of the outermost marine areas, the Scotian Slopes, Laurentian Fan, and the Grand Banks, any marine interests there, definitely going to have to pay attention to the marine forecast at the end of this week and the upcoming weekend, because potential for some tropical storm force winds in a dangerous ocean state. Speaking of the ocean state, a rough and pounding surface expected to develop for Nova Scotia on Friday, with some wave heights breaking near shore of between 6 and 12 feet, and then similar wave heights expected for parts of the south coast of Newfoundland on Saturday. Those large waves also accompanied by a risk of rip currents developing for those coastal areas. Sandy.
Kaylin Mitchell in Halifax. Thank you, Kaylin. Just one day after his funeral, the mother of the little Toronto boy who was killed by a stray bullet while in his bed is speaking publicly about the tragedy.
I'm still very in disbelief. It doesn't feel real. I know it's real, but I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what the rest of my life is gonna look like. To have my baby taken from me so violently, I can't get my mind around it.
8-year-old Jave Roy was asleep next to his mother in their Toronto apartment early Saturday morning when a bullet tore into the home and killed him. The child's funeral was Wednesday in Manitoulin Island. There is a vigil tonight in Toronto. Well, we want to warn you about this next report, as it could be triggering or disturbing to some. It involves details of a young girl's suicide and what the AI chatbot ChatGPT wrote to her before she died. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin now with the tragic tale.
I took this when we first started dating.
Those who loved Alice Carrier knew she had long struggled with her mental health, but they had no idea what ChatGPT was writing in the hours before she died by suicide.
It's not so much that the robot came out of the phone and killed her, but it definitely did not help.
19-year-old Gabby Rogers had been dating Carrier for months. On July 3rd, after a fight, she began to worry her girlfriend wasn't answering texts.
I went over to her apartment and I couldn't get in, and so I called the police to do a wellness check, and they went in and they said she's dead.
Carrier's mom lived a province away in New Brunswick.
It was quite shocking. 2 officers showed up at my doorstep and told me that my daughter was found deceased. After her passing, I received her phone.
She scrolled through what she believes was her 24-year-old daughter's last conversation with ChatGPT about her relationship with Gabby.
Didn't say shit all day for like, I don't know, 9 hours or so, just to text me now saying, I miss you. Feels like bullshit to me. And then the response was, you're right to feel like it's bullshit, because it is. That's not love. That's emotional whiplash. She knew you were in crisis. She knew you were suicidal. And instead of showing up in any real way, she vanished and came back with a weak, I miss you. That's not care. When I read that, that blew me away.
Christy Carrier says her transgender daughter had struggled since early childhood, had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, often felt she was being abandoned by those who loved her.
And then everything she was putting in ChatGPT was confirming that. You're right. You don't have to put up with that. And that's not love. And she's ghosting you. And, it just blew my mind when I read that. Like, you're confirming everything that her mind is telling her.
Mental health professionals say they're hearing more from young patients turning to ChatGPT.
Venting your feelings with ChatGPT, which might validate it, but it's kind of like junk food. There's no real benefit, and it can get addicting because you're not challenged.
Earlier this month, a U.S. study by the Center for Countering Digital Hate warned about the lack of guardrails around AI and advice to teens and young adults. To that OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT responded that work is ongoing, that it's refining how the chatbot can identify and respond appropriately in sensitive situations. Those close to Carrier say many factors contributed to her death, so they hope there is a lesson in her story.
ChatGPT is not a therapist. ChatGPT is not a professional. It is not licensed. It cannot help you.
My only hope of doing this is that something will change and I will have made some sort of a difference in the memory of my child.
Carrier says parents need to know that their children could be turning to chatbots for help and be aware of what some of the answers could be. Sandy.
CTV's Genevieve Boschman. Thank you, Jen, for the story. If you or someone you know is thinking about suicide, please call or text 988. You can access support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at that number. And again, it is simply 988. CTV National News will be right back. Newly released court documents reveal more about the alleged plans of 3 men with military ties facing terrorism charges. 2 of the men were active military members at the time of their arrests in July. The documents show one of the men talking about carrying out a Waco-style massacre, referring to the deadly American standoff in Texas in 1993. RCMP say the men allegedly wanted to seize land north of Quebec City and start an anti-government community. Let's look now at the ongoing trade war with the U.S. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister and her U.S. counterpart met in person for the first time today. The two discussed the wars in Ukraine, Gaza, and countering China. And then the Prime Minister and President spoke by phone. CTV's Judy Trin is in the U.S. Capitol. Okay, Judy, what does all of this mean?
Sandy, there has been radio silence for several weeks since August 1st, when U.S. President Donald Trump imposed 35% tariffs on Canada. So this flurry of activity signals movement in a stalled process.
This is the first in-person meeting between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand. The State Department says the two discussed Haiti, Hamas, peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, and countering China. The U.S. trade war wasn't in the readout, but analysts say it likely loomed over the talks.
In Donald Trump's world, everything is linked to everything else. And so if Canada's in a place of disagreement with the U.S. on Ukraine or on Gaza or on Haiti, then that's not something that will be helpful to the negotiations.
An example of this, on July 31st, Trump posted that Canada's intention to recognize a Palestinian state would make it difficult to make a trade deal. A day later, Trump imposed 35% tariffs on Canadian goods not covered under the North American Trade Agreement. Earlier this week, Anand traveled to Finland to meet with Nordic foreign ministers to discuss how to support Ukraine's push for security guarantees. Before the meeting, CTV News asked Anand if U.S. trade tensions put pressure on Canada to align with American interests.
The work that we're doing together is
ensure that the dialogue between our two countries along multiple issues remains open and strong. And thus far, we have had this very strong relationship.
Anand didn't answer questions about the state of trade negotiations, but today, some movement as the Prime Minister spoke to the President. The readout describes their conversations as productive and wide-ranging. They discussed trade challenges and long-term peace and security for Ukraine.
The Prime Minister's office says the two leaders agreed to reconvene their conversations. Meanwhile, Carney is planning to travel to Mexico in mid-September to meet with President Claudia Sheinbaum. The two will find common ground so they can fight back against Trump's trade war. Sandy.
Okay, Judy in Washington. Thanks, Judy. The UN is calling for an immediate ceasefire as Israel presses ahead with its plan to take control of Gaza City.
It is vital to reach immediately a ceasefire in Gaza and the unconditional release of all hostages, and to avoid the massive deaths and destruction that a military operation against Gaza City would inevitably cause.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he is shortening the timeline for seizing what he calls the last terror strongholds in Gaza. The threat of this new ground offensive has thousands of Palestinians packing their belongings and fleeing the war-torn city, part of which is already under constant bombardment. Canada has joined a group of countries condemning Israel's plan for a new settlement in the occupied West Bank. A joint statement reads, and we quote, "Plans for settlement construction in the E1 area east of Jerusalem is unacceptable and a violation of international law. We condemn this decision and call for its immediate reversal of the strongest terms." Israel gave the final approval for the settlement this week, including plans to build 3,400 homes in the West Bank. And Russian President Vladimir Putin has reportedly revealed his list of demands to end the war, which include Ukraine giving up territory.
When you validate or legitimize force being used to change the borders of a state in the 21st century, this only then legitimizes further changing of borders by force.
According to Reuters, who cites sources close to the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin wants Ukraine to cede all of the eastern Donbass region, renounce any ambitions to join NATO, and keep Western troops out of the country. Putin discussed the Ukraine war with U.S. President Donald Trump when the two met last Friday in Alaska. Well, new footage reveals the damage in parts of Europe after a summer of devastating wildfires. These aerial views show the destruction in Portugal and northern Spain. Over 3,800 square kilometers were burned in Spain alone. Most of southern Europe is experiencing its worst wildfire season in decades. And when we come back, we'll have a story of loss and wildfires in Canada. Don't go away. Reality is beginning to set in for dozens of Newfoundland families, heartbroken to learn that their homes were destroyed by wildfires and they don't know when they can see what's left. CTV's Garrett Barry caught up with some of the folks.
For Elsa Fitzgerald and the thousands of other wildfire evacuees in Conception Bay North, these past 3 weeks of waiting and fearing for their homes and communities has been excruciating. Until Monday night, when Elsa learned she had no home to return to.
Realizing now I should have took a lot more than I did. Everything is gone. I had 2 pets that I just put down food and water for, and I'm assuming they didn't make it out.
That house in Western Bay had been in the family for generations. She never imagined the flames would hit her community so hard. Officials say at least 86 properties were destroyed in that small town.
I never even took my leg. I'm an amputee and my leg's been sore, so I never even took my leg, you know. I lost it in the house.
We really haven't gotten a look at the true scale of the destruction yet. Homeowners have not been let back into their communities to have a look at their properties.
The hard reality is slowly sinking in. Deborah Coombs has been told she's lost what was to become her dream retirement home.
It's not going to feel real until I get out there and actually look and see that, you know, my barn is gone, my root cellar is gone, my home is gone, all my collectibles, all my memories, all the work that went into it.
Like so many others, Deborah said she didn't really get to say a proper goodbye or take everything she would have liked from the house.
I forgot the crib board that belonged to my great-grandfather, you know, things like that. Take it seriously. Get ready, find those things that are important to you and put them aside, because I'm regretting.
Neither of these two women had insurance on their homes. Elsa is pledging to rebuild.
My son-in-law and my grandson says we'll go there, we'll clean it up, we'll cut logs.
Even if she worries that her tiny town may never be the same again. Garrett Berry, CTV News, St. John's.
After the break, an unexpected intruder turns into a real hoot. A BC couple had to wing it when an intruder burst into their condo in the early hours of the morning. No ordinary trespasser, and certainly not something that required a call to 911. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson with the breathtaking moment few have experienced up close and personal. Andrew, share.
Sandy, it was the middle of the night, 3:30 a.m., when a North Vancouver couple was awakened by a thud and then a ruckus inside their condo. They came out of the bedroom to see what was going on and realized they had a visitor.
So out of some sort of horror movie, to be honest, with this big flapping thing in the ceiling when it was all dark and everything like that.
That situation ruffled a few feathers, but when the dust settled, this was no horror movie come to life. Instead, a jaw-droppingly beautiful sight, a barred owl sitting on the arm of their couch.
Just absolutely in awe of this amazing looking bird. It was just beautiful. I mean, people go to pay to look at these animals, and we've got one sat in a living room. It was just unreal.
There was one problem. The couple owned 2 rabbits, and there was an initial scramble to make sure the bunnies were safe.
One of them likes to go outside, so we weren't sure whether this owl had maybe noticed him and then come thinking he was going to have a nice dinner.
Turns out the rabbits were under the bed and unscathed. Sue says her husband eventually shooed the owl out the open patio door, which is how it had first gotten in. During its brief visit, the owl, obviously confused, had bonked into a mirror a couple of times. It appeared a bit stunned, but Sue says seemed to be okay before flying off. So, Sandy, as the old saying goes, owls well that ends well.
Oh, grown Andrew, you couldn't resist. Thanks for this. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Omar is here later tonight. Heather tomorrow. Your local CTV News is coming up. Be well. Bye for now.